So last week on the show, we talked about the waves that Representative-elect Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is already making by doing things like protesting in Nancy Pelosi's office or openly backing primaries against incumbent Democrats and advocating loudly for a Green New Deal. And if you're an incumbent member of Congress and you see what she's doing, but you also see the level of enthusiasm behind her, wouldn't you just instinctively think, I kind of need to do what she's doing in order to have the grassroots behind me? Maybe I should emulate her style of doing politics and do what she's doing. But no, they're not doing that. Instead, they're choosing to talk shit about her behind her back. As Anthony Androgna and Zach Coleman of Politico explains, veteran Democratic lawmakers are closing ranks against new members, pushing the party to the left on climate change. Incoming chairmen say they want to address climate change, but they are bristling at the tactics of Representative-elect Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and other newly elected Democrats who say the party needs to come up with a Green New Deal that would decarbonize the economy within a decade. The idea that in 5 years or 10 years, we're not going to consume any more fossil fuels is technologically impossible, Representative Peter DeFazio, who's in line to lead the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, told Politico. We can have grand goals, but let's be realistic about how we get there. Ocasio-Cortez is working with other liberal members and youth climate activists to expand the scope of a select committee on climate change that Nancy Pelosi wants to relaunch if elected speaker. But several older members say they think even creating a new panel would be a distraction and could delay action by the existing committees with jurisdiction over the issue. Incoming Energy and Commerce Chairman Frank Pallone slammed the creation of a new committee during a closed-door meeting of Democrats Thursday, drawing pushback from Ocasio-Cortez and Representative-elect Joe Neguse. Liberal environmental advocates torched Pallone for his opposition to the revival of the Climate Select Committee. Frank Pallone is concerned about holding onto his power and title, not about the future of our generation or human civilization, said the Sunrise Movement, which organized a protest at Pelosi's office earlier this week. If he were serious about stopping climate change, he would give back his money from fossil fuel PACs and support the Select Committee for a Green New Deal, the only policy in history that rises to the scale of this crisis. And that's exactly the problem with people like Pallone. They'll come up with a reason as to why they don't support action on climate change. In this case, he doesn't support the creation of a committee on climate change, which is just the tiniest step in the right direction, when he's taking money from fossil fuel industries. So is it the case that you don't think this is the best route, or are you just corrupt and bought off by fossil fuel PACs? Is that what it is, Frank? I think that you and I both know the answer to this. It's because he's corrupt, he's bought off. It's because we don't live in a democracy anymore. We effectively live in an oligarchy. And that's not me saying that. That's political science studies. That's a Princeton University study published in 2014 by Drs. Gillens and Page, who found that when you look at policy outcomes, well, normal citizens like you and I, we have a statistically insignificant impact on policy outcomes. But special interests, large multinational corporations, they actually do have an impact on policy outcomes. Their policy preferences oftentimes dictate what policy outcomes we see. You and I, though, we don't get that. So the individuals who are, quote, bristling at Ocasio-Cortez here, they're just corrupt. And they don't like that she's putting them in this awkward position to where they're kind of forced to act and betray the will of their donors. Well, too bad. We don't care if you're going to offend your donors and you're no longer going to be able to take money from them. What we care about is saving the planet, because we have 10 years to act according to the IPCC, and if we don't act, then I don't even want to think about the worst case scenario. But it wasn't just people who were pissed, who were against what Ocasio-Cortez is doing, because there were some other Democrats that gave, I guess you could say, very Democrat-y answers. And what I mean by that is just, what you'd expect from Democrats, just a milquetoast non-response, paying lip service, patting people on the head, but really not wanting to do much. Quote, I have the same energy, I have the same urgency, but I think we need to have a conversation about how we do it, Representative Jared Huffman told Politico. It would help to sit down with those of us that have been here and have been working on these issues and want to team up and go big on climate, because I think we have to be strategic and I think we have to function as a team. But it's a big team, noted Representative Henry Queller. He said the centrist Blue Dog Caucus expects to add 6 to 8 members. He worried a climate change committee and goals like 100% renewable energy could turn off voters in swing districts at a time when Democrats would be unable to do more than pass, quote, messaging bills. A lot of the Republican seats that we won, a lot of them are moderate, conservative Democrats, and we have to keep that in mind. Those are the people I'm concerned about, Queller said. We can't go too extreme. Right, and what you're failing to realize is that we don't have a choice. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez didn't just arbitrarily come up with this 10-year deadline for us to act on climate change. This is what the IPCC is saying. They're giving us 10 years to act and saying if we don't act and significantly reduce carbon emissions within this period of time, within this next decade, then we will not be able to avert a climate catastrophe. But if we do act and take significant steps to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, then that will give us a better fighting chance against the worst of climate change. A Green New Deal is exactly what we need to get us on the right track and literally save the world. So to say, oh, we can't be too extreme, we don't have a choice. You're not doing enough. And if we wait on you, if we wait for bipartisanship, if we wait for everyone to come around and sing Kumbaya and hold hands, humanity goes extinct. Waiting on Democrats is not an option for us, because Democrats have shown that they are spineless cowards who don't have the willpower to act. They don't have the political courage to just do what they were elected to do, represent people. Most Americans want us to act on climate change. Most Americans want us to take action on other issues. Medicare for all, marijuana legalization, a federal jobs guarantee. I can go on. But you're not acting. So it's not just this issue. It's one issue that demonstrates how ineffectual Democrats are. So for them to just say, oh, we can't be too extreme and we need to do X, Y, and Z, and this other committee could be better for us. Shut the fuck up. You're not doing anything. You haven't been doing anything. You had a supermajority in 2008. What did you do? Nothing on climate change. You passed a right-wing healthcare reform. That's your only major legislative accomplishment. So forgive me for not caring about what you have to say now that we have someone like Ocasio-Cortez in there who's actually willing to fight for us. She has the American people behind her. She's willing to be bold and do things that are unorthodox, protest in Pelosi's office in order to demand action on climate change. And that's exactly the type of boldness that we need right now. We need leaders. You're not a leader. You are someone who is propping up the status quo, a status quo that doesn't represent average Americans, that is sitting idly by content as we destroy the planet, as we make our planet uninhabitable. So I'm sorry. Your time has come and gone, and since you don't want to act, and since you failed to act when you had the time to act, now it's time for other people to come through and do what you refused to do. So either step aside or help Ocasio-Cortez, but bristling at her, quote, tactics isn't going to do anything. Since you guys are refusing to represent us, it's time we take bold steps, because the climate can't wait. The climate doesn't play politics. The climate isn't going to wait for Democrats to get their act together. A Green New Deal is the only thing we got right now that can actually do what's needed to be done. So the fact that Democrats are poo-pooing something like a Green New Deal when there's this much momentum for it, it just shows why they're fundamentally incapable of representing the will of the people. And I say we primary every last one of them until they're all kicked out of office. But in the meanwhile, we're not going to back down, because you guys have shown that you're incapable of doing what the people want. So now you can sit down and shut up.
Support this podcast by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Humanist Report.